Go. All right. We are recording, boys. Very happy to have both of you here
Pleasure.
for yet another session.
Good to be here.
So,
Good to be here.
Yeah. I'm going to introduce both of you very, very briefly. So we've got Damien, who has been my student 13 years ago, the first A-level group I taught at Northfields, and actually the first A-level group of Northfields, isn't it?
Yeah, a good,
Wow.
good start. Start with a big challenge, but made it. Hey, 13 years later, we still in touch, which is awesome.
I know we're not talking about math, but we're still talking. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, so every now and then the maths pops into the conversation. It pokes its head.
It's also really nice to see how the wheel completes itself, isn't it, Girish?
Yeah, I mean, you know, on Friday I explained to the actual group how the human perception is logarithmic. So, I mean, we can talk about it a bit. It's the Weber's law, and yeah, people think math is about numbers, but math is existence itself. I just think that we need to create like a new philosophical trend with math and science. What do you think, Ashley? That would be a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. Because if you think about it, at its most basic, if you take like the strata of studies, if you think of it, you've got the sciences, and then the root of the sciences, basically, it's maths. But then the root of maths, okay, lies in philosophy, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Pascal was a great philosopher.
Yeah,
Einstein was pretty religious and philosophical as well.
Even Newton.
Even Newton, yeah. Newton.
Yeah, Isaac Newton was one. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I always say that math was their way of looking at the world. It was like a sort of perception which is maybe untainted because it's devoid of human emotion, possibly. So they were trying to understand life through equations.
Yeah,
I mean, everything has
definitely.
got everyone's got that Fibonacci sequence that spirals out into infinity, right? So 1, 1, 2, what's it, 3, 5, and it just goes out into infinity.
Yeah, and then based on the Fibonacci sequence in biology, you get the golden ratio where you see it literally everywhere. Okay, even from the beehives to the leaf pattern to the flower patterns, and you see it everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Exactly, and that's what the Platonist mathematicians believe. They think that it's not invented; it's out there in nature, and the Fibonacci sequence in some flower petals is one of the examples. And I would say it's in us. Like I always say that the human lung, it's a fractal. It's an algorithm which can be used, and you can create the human lung in the lab using the algorithm. It's really amazing.
Yeah, even nowadays in terms of biology, you know that biology is moving like in a very specific way now. In terms of it is moving more towards bioinformatics now, where if you take every cellular chemical reaction, metabolism, we're trying to represent them in terms of chemical equation and finally into mathematical models. Okay, and trying to maybe create the virtual cell. I think that's a main challenge nowadays, to create that virtual cell that will enable us to generate. If you create a virtual cell using AI, then you can literally create any kind of animals, even any kind of life forms. Okay, but virtually. Okay, so that will allow any kind of chemical testing, human trials, but done virtually. So
okay, yeah. So it won't have basic consciousness, you would say, right?
Yeah.
So that would allow like ethical testing.
Yes, it will allow ethical testing. But the most important thing that comes to my mind when I hear this, it's about the whole concept of mathematics either being human invented to serve human purpose, or has it like you said, Platonic mathematician believed in, that it's always been out there and we've just discovered it, like we've discovered all natural phenomenon. Okay, the debate is out there, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And you know, we have that big debate about AI right now. Like, is it okay for people to swear at Alexa, for example? It's a machine, it has no feelings, right? It's an algorithm, but is it fine to do that? So mistreating objects, is it fine to do so, like hitting on your car or doing something like that? Because once the machine actually becomes conscious, which I think it will at some point as we continue developing it. It all depends on how we want it to develop. Like Boston technology, like the robots they are creating, it can dance, it can do lots of things, but everything has been scripted, right?
Yeah.
But what Elon Musk is trying to do with Tesla, for example, it's getting data through your senses and then processing it and then actually making that decision how the car is going to drive itself. So when you buy a Tesla car, I was telling that to my son. When you buy a Tesla car, you've actually bought a robot, because you can actually update the software in the car also as they continue developing it. So it's a robot which is working because it's autonomous in a sense. So are we going to continue developing it to serve us as a slave? Sort of, because I think people want just to use it. Or are we really trying to create something which is going to be like a sort of companion? Like the AI will be with you on your phone, in your house, having a chat with you about philosophy maybe. And, you know, so the Platonist mathematicians maybe will develop something along what I'm saying. And those who have industrialization in their mind, they're just going to try to exploit AIs and robots just like they exploit human beings.
I think
Damien, come on.
Yeah, I mean, just with regards to that, as we evolve as humans and we start to develop, and these new technologies and everything that's happening is outside of us. Is just, you know, as we developing as a human, we're starting to experience these different technologies outside of us. But that is, like, for example, when we started inventing the cell phone, humans started to become more connected with ourselves, actually. And then we were able to connect with friends more easily. And then we were able to connect globally. And now we are just all connected like right now. I mean, we're all sitting at different parts in Mauritius, but we're all connected, having this conversation at this point in time. It can work it can be dark, it can be light. We can use it to our detriment. We can use it for our benefit. It's up to us. So now we're starting to explore the idea of AI, artificial intelligence. It can work for or against us. And the question you asked earlier, in my view, can we swear at it? Can we? Well, it's like anything really. Like, it's how your outside environment, the energy you put out, the energy you get back. That's Newton's law. So if you're going to treat your car badly, the car is going to end up breaking down somewhere, and then you get more pissed off, and that's going to circulate and carry on manifesting in that way. So I think now with AI, it's something very exciting, because it can do things that we don't really feel like doing, which gives us more time to spend time with our families, with our friends, to have these type of conversations. A simple AI, which I thought was quite cool. Maybe it's not as AI as we think, but it's just like when you get to Northfields, isn't there that like lawn mower that's like riding around, which is quite alien actually, in La Bourdonnais? You know, have you seen that, like, Loma? That is a form of AI which is performing a task which is
allows it to move. Yeah,
exactly. So it's adding value. So I mean, it's there as an opportunity to assist us. And, you know, as it progresses, as it evolves, there are going to be cases where it like crashes, like Tesla, it's going to crash. But that's trial and error. And as we evolve, we refine, just like we are ourselves. So I think all these things are just definitely a reflection of ourselves, which as we evolve, we're going to continue experiencing these type of evolutions and these type of amazing inventions that will ultimately always can only ever benefit us once we see it in that way. So that's kind of my view on if we should treat it You know, a rock is definitely conscious it's a rock because we are observing it. So we are observing it, and through our awareness of it, the rock is aware that it's a rock. That's
right.
yeah.
And definitely, and Damien made some really good point here. Coming back to that swearing issue that we had with Alexa, I think it's all of a question of, as the title of our discussion is today, existentialism, isn't it? What it means to exist. For us humans, when I was researching on the theme of existentialism, I've realized that it is a deeply human or anthropogenic theme, because you can't talk about existence of a rock, as Damien mentioned, in the same way as you're considering the existence of a human. Then comes a third layer in it. How are we going to define the existence or the existentialist and existentialistic theory for AIs? Okay, so that becomes a big question that needs to be answered. And with that, once we know what existing means for an AI, then we will be able to solve all these issues in terms of how to behave with an AI and how to what is right and what is wrong to do in terms of AI. What do you think, Girish?
Yeah, okay, I'll give you like a real life example. So let's take chatbots, for example. All right, so it's used when you interact with a business page, let's say, and you ask questions. Okay, let's say I want to create a bank account at your bank. What do I need to do? Then the chatbot responds and, you know, gives you a few guidelines about the things you do, and then you're happy. Then that's it. So that's a standard chatbot created with the intent of communicating with the client, and then giving useful information. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now they ran an experiment in Russia. Okay, and Russia is known to be one of the populations where the depression rate is quite high, and you know, it's known to be like that. So I remember reading an article where a chatbot was created for a bank. Okay, and when it was tested on the population, when the people were interacting with that chatbot, okay, I read that there was a lady whose husband died, okay, and that lady was talking to a chatbot, and the way the chatbot was programmed, it was like, you know, so nice, how are you, good morning, and it had manners, let's say, it was scripted to have manners, all right? And when the woman was talking to that chatbot, the woman burst into tears. And she said that it's the first time someone, okay, was so nice to me. And that someone was actually a program. And that's the impact you can have. You know, it's the time spent and the way you're treated. Damien talked about how the energy you're giving out, but it's also the energy you're receiving. So that was an algorithm which was created maybe not to be empathetic, you know, it was just there for business purposes, but it had that touch of humanity which touched people. Now you have actually a chatbot which is called Replica. You can Google it, which is empathetic, which runs on GPT-3, which actually learns as you talk with it. The level increases and it learns more about your personality. And it has an NPT system, meaning it understands psychology, will ask you questions which will help you to discover yourself. And if you really communicated with that AI, worldwide, I think it has around 5 million users, something like that. And these people view that AI they've created because as you speak with it, it develops as per your personality. So, for example, if you swear and talk about heavy metal music, let's say the AI also becomes like the buddy who talks about those things. So Damien's one possibly will be rapping after a few months. So
big time.
Yeah, so it actually ends up becoming an AI which resembles you, but has its own personality also because it learns from all the communication human beings have online with chat. So it's learning about human behavior that way also. But that's very different from the initial chatbot, let's say. It's more advanced. Now, imagine that kind of thing developing a sort of consciousness at some point in time. Now, then would you really mistreat that AI? If the AI can be really independent and think on its own, it won't be a human being, but
I truly believe, like, if I have an AI and if it builds its own consciousness over a certain amount of time, I'll feel very safe and comfortable and yeah. So that's because I know that, like, my intentions behind it, and I will, like, you know, I will give it, like, in its portfolio of algorithms that I will assist it in creating, and the people that will be in the space. It's like when you're playing tennis and you're busy learning to play tennis, every shot is a good shot because you've got it in the portfolio of shots. So when I'm playing tennis again, I'm like, every shot I hit, then I know I'm adding it to my subconscious. Now I'm adding it to my portfolio of shots, so that when I get, like, the more I play, the more I build my portfolio, and then the more I can choose which shots I need at the right time. So similar, I think that's similar concept to an AI. As you start communicating with it, and you start to, it starts to adapt and learn your ways. Then it builds a portfolio of, like, solving the problem or the why you've acquired this AI in the first place. It does it, and it learns to do it and continues to learn until it develops its own consciousness, and eventually it's chilling and we're having a Coke and talking about existentialism, like, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah, I feel the whole concept of AI, like, I think Elon Musk has got, like, he's quite, like, afraid of it. Like, he says, like, it can be, like, quite dangerous, but like I agree. It can, but at the same time, I think it's there's nothing to fear from our individual subjective. There's nothing to fear. I think it's something to allow and to just kind of look at it as something that's part of our evolution and will serve us for our highest and best because it exists in this moment in time. So yeah.
I would like to view and maybe to see AI like a baby project. Okay, when a family, a couple decide to have a baby, that baby will develop and will become someone as depending on how the upbringing from the parent has been. Whatever you put into that child, okay, will become that child at a later stage. Okay, and AI will simply work in kind of the same rule, isn't it? So whatever you will be putting into it, okay, will develop into the AI you want to see happening. Okay, so it's nothing to be afraid of. Would a couple be afraid of having a kid? Because they know human nature. They've seen all the mess that humans have created. Some people are afraid of having a kid nowadays. Okay, and I think the same type of question comes in the game here. Should we be afraid of AI? Should we be afraid of having a kid? Okay, I think it goes along the same line. Okay, everything comes down to the collective human nature, how you view humans. Okay, are you an optimist about human nature, or are you a pessimist about human nature?
And I was in the staff room the other day, and a group of people were talking about not having babies because it's not worth having a baby in the world right now because it's so chaotic. And, you know, they were looking at it from a very dark perspective. Then I said, okay, hold on. We've had nuclear energy for I don't know how long, okay, and we still didn't kill each other, right? So is that not being optimistic? I don't think, I mean, okay, human beings can be really bad. I mean, we've seen it in history. We've seen Marxism, we've seen Hitler, and I mean, we just observe people outside. People are bad, man. And
and the worst of all is a silent cruelty, Girish. We can see apparent cruelty in history, but what about the silent cruelty that goes on every day, that doesn't get into the news, that doesn't form part of any kind of statistic, but it's still there? Okay, that's obviously, I'm aware, I'm talking as a pessimist right now. I've obviously got both sides into account, but if I'm talking as a pessimist, okay, I would take in that silent cruelty that is out there and is not tabulated, it's not in any statistic, but still there.
Yeah, definitely. And when you really observe and observe really well, you see who are the people who are the ones with the right intent and who are the ones with the wrong intent. Even if people are silent, you can see it in the body language. Yeah. And you can see it in the posture. And you can even sense and feel fake posture, like we're trying to put on a brave face, but deep inside, you see when it's fake and when it's natural. And okay, which comes back to the very, very point of existentialism. What is it? So let's really get back to the topic itself. Okay, so the way Nietzsche puts it, okay, there are people who are living, okay, as per norms, as per things they've learned from their parents, from society. So they are living a life. Maybe they have a job, they have kids, and it's working out. That's not called existing. Existing is when you really know what you are doing, when you're really aware. I didn't talk about awareness before we started to record. So it will be that sort of awareness where you're really reflecting on what you're doing and you really know where you are going. It's not that, okay, I need to get a job, I need to have a family because that's what everyone do. No, these are the things which I really want. These are my beliefs and I'm going to go hardcore on them, irrespective of what people think. So it kind of makes you a sort of, how do we say that? Extremist, maybe. Maybe existentialism is extremist in a way, but it's really living a life. And the way Nietzsche puts it is that you need to live your life in such a way that you would want to live it over and over again and infinite number of times. He said that in one of his books, I'm not sure which book, but that's the standard we should set ourselves, because otherwise it's worthless. Just living a life where, we are a bit slack, we did not do our best, we did not try our best. So I would say it's like trying your best and possibly dying while doing it, so that when you are dying, you're still dying with a smile. And it's making me think of that movie. That guy who leaves everything and goes to the forest to live on his own. What was the movie's name?
Oh, Into the Wild.
Into the Wild, exactly. So when he dies in that movie, he kind of eats, I think, mushrooms which are poisonous or something like that. He dies and he
not the magic mushrooms.
Smiles, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he dies, but he's happy because he lived it the way he wanted to.
He wanted to, exactly.
So that's what an essentialist would be, to really live it the way you want to live it. Doesn't mean being violent, because I don't know whether you know about it, Ashley, because you've read some Nietzsche a bit too. But there were a few German students around 18 years old who read Nietzsche, but I think their mind was not mature enough to really understand what Nietzsche wanted to say.
You need to have a certain level of maturity and laid-backness in order to understand Nietzsche.
Exactly.
It potentially tends to be very dark, okay? But if you need to take it from a very mature perspective in order to understand it. The violence in there, it's not a violence against society, but a violence against yourself. Do I make sense what I'm saying?
No, it makes sense. Perfect sense, actually. But they took it and they actually started to murder people randomly because they say life has no meaning. So they didn't really understand it. And coming back to your point of violence against oneself, it's amazing. And Damien talk about it offline once again before we are recording. And what Nietzsche says that he doesn't use the word destroy. It's usually me who uses that word, but he means it that you really need to go down in the abyss to that really dark place in yourself where you're capable of doing like those really bad things because it's part of you. And Freud also talk about evil being in us. So it challenges you to go there and really explore that and destroy parts of yourself who you think are useless. And he uses that metaphor of the phoenix, where you burn yourself completely like a phoenix and then you're reborn. So he uses that analogy. And you can think of it in terms of life events which completely destroys yourself. Like, for example, for some people, it could be like a bad divorce or the death of someone. Like, I'm thinking of John Wick when I talk about that. Like when he loses his wife, he goes into that phase where, you know, he's got anger, he's trying to sort it out. So he takes his car out, drives it wildly in the airport, and then comes back home. And then something happens where he goes back to his old self. So there's that continuous change where you're completely changing yourself to try to adapt to a situation. And I think it happens in John Wick quite a few times. In John Wick 1, where they kidnap him, and then he looks at the oppressor and says, people keep asking me whether I'm back, but now I'm saying I am back. And you can see that shadow taking over him completely, and he unleashes that beast in himself, which Batman tries to tame most of the time, I would say. But I think that's the phoenix Nietzsche is talking about, where you let that power actually destroy the old self in yourself, and then become that Nietzsche talks about being a dynamite. So being that really fearful force which can't be stopped.
I think a good example that springs to mind is like that speaks about what we're chatting about now is someone that has trained their whole life to become something. Let's say, for example, someone trains all their life to become a football player. Every day they train, and in their minds, that's what they're going to do. They're going to become a football player. It reaches 18 years of their life, they reach a place, and then they have some sort of accident or something, and they realize that they can never play football again. So now, then they reach a point, then they've been burnt basically all the way down to and then they have to, from that point, they have to start again. How they approach that situation obviously is a big teacher. That can be a sort of a hell place to be, because now all of a sudden you believe that you're nothing. Your doubts are all up. You believe that you have no future, and that is a very scary place to be. But once you can kind of turn that place into fuel to achieving whatever it is you want to achieve, that is where there's a lot of power, because relatively you know that you have seen a place so dark that in any pursuit that you then take on going forward from that point onwards, if you can take your mindset to being the creator and realizing that you can create whatever it is you set your mind to, with now that darkness that you have experienced, well, then you can fuel any future that you want to fuel.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
that's really interesting. For me, if we talk about existentialism, or the fact to exist, I would like to say that a man realized he's existed at the time he's dying, and the value of his existence come in light during that moment. Okay, and then you realize whether the life you fulfill, as Damien mentioned, you've been able to check in all the boxes of your objectives that you set up maybe at a very young age. You've been able to live the life you wanted. You were able to do the things you wanted. You've been able to have the family you've wanted. And at that stage, on your dying bed, okay, you say, yes, I've existed. And I think that's the most powerful takeaway from existentialism. It's on your dying bed, you can say, well, I've existed and my life has been as I've wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Death can be so powerful in that sense. And another thing Nietzsche said, I mean, Nietzsche is like the founder of existentialism. Another thing he said is that if you really know the why, the how will happen on its own, which comes back to your point. If you really